everybody, and welcome to today's video. I would like to start by apologising for not having too many videos up over the last couple of weeks. It has been an incredibly busy couple of weeks for me with all the reviews that I've had to do, as well as get ready for E3, the magazine that I've got coming out this week, and so on. It has been an incredibly busy couple of weeks for me. I haven't gone to bed before 1 AM most days. But I am hoping as of next week I will have a steady stream of streams and videos for you again. I'm looking to get back into the normal swing of things as of next week once E3 is done and dusted. But anyway, that's not the point of this video. It wasn't just meant to be an apology. I wanted to do an unscripted video. I haven't written anything down about this one, but I wanted to do a response to the responses that have been coming in to the recent release of Ratchet and Clank. You probably have noticed that review embargo for that game lifted overnight for us in Australia, and as a result there's been over 100 odd reviews. It is a very big game. It has been a very hyped up game and everybody got their hands on it. I have my own review up on digitally-downloaded.net, but what has been interesting is, as always, the response to that review, to those reviews, because of course the game isn't actually available as yet at the time I record this, and of course people have already had opinions on those reviews, particularly the ones which people see as negative. They're not negative, of course. We are talking about the lowest score for this game being a 7 out of 10, which is a very good score, but because it isn't the really high scores that the game has been getting from some other quarters, there have been a lot of fans that have taken it on themselves to go out and defend this game by attacking the critics and the publications that have dared to publish negative reviews. This, of course, happens every single time. What I'm saying in this video is not going to be anything new, but I haven't done a video on this topic before, so I want to have one there so I can refer back to it in the future, because this is going to come up again and again and again. It's happened to me plenty of times as a critic. It happens to anybody that does a negative review of a popular or overly hyped game. Especially from Sony, it has to be said these days. Sony is in such a good place in terms of its fan base, in terms of its reputation, and the fact that it produces the biggest blockbuster games of all. It has a fan base that is particularly vocal at anybody that they perceive to be critical of it or its games. So if I run through a couple of comments on these reviews for these 7 out of 10 negative reviews, as though 7 out of 10 is a negative, here's one on Metro. Typical GC, which is Game Central, which is the Metro gaming section. Typical GC this, making a game lower than pretty much everything else to come across as edgy. Another comment on that review had to remind people that a 7 out of 10 is not a negative review at all. Over on the Washington Post, which was another 7 out of 10, maybe it isn't the writer's fault, but for such a well-respected paper, I'm surprised how lacking in gaming journalism there is. Hardly any depth to these articles. Ridiculous review giving a 7 out of 10 to a game and giving the medium that's completely bland and with tons of performance issues an 8 out of 10. I mean, Ratchet and Clank isn't in any way comparable to the medium. Trying to compare the two is ridiculous. But this is the kind of tone of comments that have been appearing on these negative 7 out of 10 reviews. Even I've had one. I gave the game 8 out of 10. I thought it was an excellent game. But because I happened to mention that it was shallow, in giving it 8 out of 10, I had some well-meaning people ask me questions about why I thought it was shallow. That's fine, of course. And then I had somebody also jump on the review to say that I aspire to be some kind of contrarian, which is not true. I mean, my review is only 9 points less than the Metacritic average. That review is in no way contrarian. I just state a simple fact that it's shallow, and anybody who disagrees with that is really blinkered in terms of what that game is. It's not even pretending it's not shallow. It's quite open about it. But again, and I don't actually think that comment, if that person happens to watch this video, I don't think that comment was meant as an attack on me. It was meant as a genuine attempt to engage with the review I'd written. But again, there is that inherent defensiveness about it, that I had some kind of ulterior motive in writing the review I did. Apparently, I have some reason to want to mark down Ratchet and Clank and be a contrarian about it by giving it an 8 out of 10. It is strange for me as a critic to read those comments, and it's certainly not the only one I got. I still get emails to this day about my Ghost of Tsushima review, which I gave 6 out of 10. I didn't think it was a bad game, but I had issues with it. I laid them out, and as a result, because it was a Sony game and therefore popular, I got a lot of criticism for it, a lot of heat for it. It was a 4,000 word review, and almost nobody who was critical of it engaged with me on it, but it is what it is. We do get used to this stuff as game critics, and this isn't meant to be a rant, but it is meant to outline the fact that none of us out there who write reviews about games, none of us can be critical of a popular game without getting an awful lot of heat from people who genuinely have not actually played the game at all. I mean, a lot of the time, the critical comments that come in before the game is actually out. People are just reading the reviews and responding to them based purely on what they know about the game from the hype and the marketing campaign. So they see the best of what the game's offering. They hear the interviews with the developers and the developer diaries, and they're all talking about how great their game is, how powerful it is, what they were trying to achieve with it. And they assume that all of that is just there in the game. They never actually stop to think that perhaps the game critic who has played it might have a different view, and that perhaps the developers weren't always successful in what they implemented into the game. But again, this is all just very common. We all know that this happens over and over again in this industry. What I'm saying is nothing new. I guess what I wanted to make as my main point of this video is a lot of these people don't realize just how much they actually harm the games industry by doing so. Because by insisting that everybody who reviews a game likes it, if it's a popular game, you know, by suggesting that nobody can have an opinion that diverges from the popular opinion about a game, these people are very much arguing that all games should be homogenized. Because that is exactly what they're arguing for. If you're not allowed to diverge from the popular opinion about a game, that must mean by default that there's only one way to make games, because that must be, the popular way must be the only right way. The only right way to look at a game, the only right way to play a game, the only right way to think of a game. And of course, this happens. This is what the AAA blockbuster industry honestly believes. They homogenize their games to such an extent that they all start to feel the same as one another, simply because they're told via the fans, via the comments on the internet, that this is all they want. The focus groups, they effectively use the internet as a focus group medium, and they have all these feeds about all the social media posts that come in. They neatly categorize them into positive, negative, and neutral, and they use that to determine what they should put in their own games. And it's always the same thing that rises to the top, because anybody who has an opinion that diverges from that feels like they can't really voice it. You have to be a particularly brave person these days to go out there and be critical of a Sony game. And I felt it myself, that I have actually felt that should I go out there and rate this Sony game at this score, because if I do so, I know what's coming in for me. I knew what was going to happen to me when I wrote that Ghost of Tsushima review well before I published it. I knew it. I was going to do it anyway, because I felt like what I wanted to say was what I wanted to say, and I was going to stand by it. But you have to be a particularly brave person to do that. You can't do it on social media without risking an avalanche of support from criticism from the Sony people. And the same happens for Nintendo, of course, and Microsoft and Square Enix. And any game that has a big enough profile has enough very loud and quite toxic fans that if you diverge from the opinion about what you're allowed to have about that game, then you're going to cop it. And that silences those voices. And as a result, there's only one voice that's allowed, and that's the voice that the publishers see. And in turn, we end up getting these same games over and over again. All of this hurts the creativity. That is why criticism is so important to creativity. Another comment I often get is, critics don't make video games, therefore how can they understand them? That's not the point. The point of critics is out there to analyze the game, not make them. And by analyzing them, that becomes part of the feedback loop and the conversation that informs future game development. The more robust a criticism community is, the more vocal, or the more ideas that critics can put out there, the more the feedback that the artists get, and the more broad ideas that the artists can engage with, and that results in better art. I mean, if you look at the world of painting or the world of literature, these areas have very robust criticism, and also film. I mean, the film industry is kind of two-tone, where there's the popular film industry, which is very much like the video game industry, where you're only allowed to like the popular things, and if you don't like the popular things, like a Marvel film, for example, you get slammed. But in the kind of the art film area, and in literature and in paintings and in ballet and whatever, the criticism, the critical circles are very robust and very open and have a lot of different voices. And because of that, there is a lot greater creativity in these fields. The artistic quality of these fields develops at a much greater rate because the dialogue is more open. And once again, when I was looking at these reviews of Ratchet and Clank, and I couldn't help but look at some of the comments on the lower scored reviews, I knew what was going to be there, because we all know what's going to be there. It happens every single time. But every single time it just acts that little bit more to tell everybody who doesn't like Ratchet and Clank that they're not allowed to not like Ratchet and Clank. They must like Ratchet and Clank exactly enough, not more, not less. Because remember, if you rate a game too highly, you also get criticized for it. But with this idea that there's only one right score, one right opinion about these games, the dialogue around those games just gets silenced, and that's kind of a tragedy for this whole medium. Anyhow, this video ended up being more of a rant than I intended it on being, so sorry about that, but thank you for staying to the end of it. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you disagree with me, who knows? Maybe there are some people out there that do think that there's only one right score for video games, only one right way to look at them, and only one right way to play them. That being the case, let me know. Let's have that conversation. But other than that, if you like my videos, please click that like and subscribe button. That way you'll get to watch them as soon as I put them up. And once again, I apologize for not being too active over the last 2 weeks, but I will return to normal schedule within the next week, which will be good or bad, I guess. And if you do enjoy my work, and it's not just this YouTube channel, of course, remember I also have digitally-downloaded.net, which I put up 15 plus articles a week, including a lot of reviews of games. And I also have a magazine which you can get. You get all of that. You support all of that by backing me on Patreon. You can do that for $1 a month. And yeah, I think it's pretty good value since the magazine is exclusive to Patreon backers. Other than that, I want to say thank you very much. With Ratchet and Clank being out the door very soon, I assume a lot of people who tune into this will indeed be buying it. I hope you love it. It is a lot of fun. Really entertaining game, and we will see you at the next video.